Well, May is National Stroke Awareness Month, and joining us now is Bill Mellander. He had a stroke a little over 2 years ago. He was only 39 years old, and he's here to share his story and help raise awareness for this cause this month. Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
That's a very scary thing for a 39-year-old and completely unexpected. What happened?
Totally unexpected, you know, someone like myself, I had no warning signs. I certainly had no risk factors. There was no reason to suspect that anything like that was going to happen to me.
No symptoms?
No symptoms whatsoever. You know, except the day that it happened, you know, which I think is that's the message, I think, to everyone out there.
What was going on that day?
Yeah, walk us through that day.
I woke up and I had probably the worst headache of my life.
Really?
For someone who's never experienced anything like that, it's really hard to explain. Other than think of the worst possible migraine you could have ever had. And this was 10 times worse. But I fought through it. I even consciously told myself that this is going to be a really rough day. But it was, you know, the last day before a long weekend. I was going to trudge through it.
It was the day before Thanksgiving.
It was the day before Thanksgiving. I'm going to make the best of this, and you know, I've got the whole weekend to kind of rest and recover. And then you talk about identifying when something is wrong. You know, the American Heart Association talks about the FAST symptoms, F-A-S-T.
Right.
Face drooping. You know, arm weakness,
right.
You have trouble with speech. That progression is exactly what happened to me.
On that day?
You know, I had the headache, I ignored it. But then I started to have muscle weakness. And then I started to have difficulty with my speech. And actually the last thing I said was, I told my wife to call the ambulance.
So you suffered the stroke, and how long are you in the hospital? Let's talk the recovery and maybe the day or two after the stroke. What are doctors telling your family at this point?
I don't remember much of it at all.
Well, I think they knew that this was a stroke. They were looking for other things, like you had a seizure or maybe a brain tumor.
They had no reason to suspect that that I was having a stroke. You know, initially the doctors in the emergency room thought that I was having a seizure of some kind, and they did everything to try and recognize what kind of seizure it was, to try and stop the seizure, and nothing was working. You know, it's when you're having a stroke, it's about getting yourself assistance as quickly as possible. It's about getting yourself help as fast as you can, because the longer it goes, the more damage that occurs, the more blood loss there is to the brain, and the more permanent the damage can become. The number one most preventable cause of disease, or the number one most preventable cause of disability, is a stroke. And that's where it's about time.
Right.
And, you know, that's why I consider myself extremely lucky, because I had none of that. You know, I had all of that working against me. I worked against myself. I knew something was wrong, but I chose not to do anything about it. And even the doctors in the emergency room, you know, had no reason to suspect it was a stroke, so they did everything they could to try and rule anything else out.
What kind of symptoms did you have after effects?
The only real deficit that I have now left is short-term memory loss.
Wow.
And that's something I deal with, you know, I'm a furious note taker.
You were telling us you've gone through 5 cell phones in the past 2 years.
I keep losing my cell phone, you know, but, you know.
And I'm sure that comes in handy with your wife. You're like, honey, I forgot. I'm
sorry
I forgot to take the trash out. I'm not lying to you. I really did.
I just forgot it. No, it's fantastic. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, losing a couple cell phones is very, very small, considering that I probably shouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I am. So, you know, the big message, I think, would be, if your body's telling you something is wrong, listen, do something about it, you know, because it certainly doesn't hurt to call a doctor. Your doctor is not going to think you're dumb.
Or
your
crazy,
doctor is not going to think you're crazy. If you say, hey, you know, I think something might be happening here, something isn't right, what do you think? The worst thing they're going to do is say, no, you're fine. don't worry about it.
And then you have that peace of mind.
And you have that peace of mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, you're certainly blessed, and we thank you for being on here today and promoting awareness and just helping us keep abreast and in mind of little symptoms that can trigger us. Listen to our bodies.
Thanks, guys. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Okay, you guys, so once again, here are some things to remember when looking for the signs of a stroke. Use the word fast, like he said, to detect the warning signs. F for face. Ask the person to smile. Does one side of their face droop? A is for arms. Ask the person to raise both arms. Does one arm drift downward? S stands for speech. Ask the person to repeat a simple phrase. Is their speech slurred or strange? And T, time. If you observe any of these signs, call 911 immediately. And we are going to be back with more broadcasts right after this.